Hi everyone, this is Amy from the Helms Academy, and today we're doing our Reading and Writing Club recap on prefixes and suffixes. This is our Reading and Writing Club from September 8th, 2020, and if you missed it that day, or you just want to do a recap of what we learned in class, hope you'll come along. So we're going to start with the word prefix. So what does it mean when you see pre as part of a word? Well, if you think about words like prehistoric or pre-test, pre means before. So anytime we see the word pre as part of another word, we know it's going to have some meaning with before. So prefix is where we're going to start today. A prefix is a word placed before another. So essentially you'll have a prefix and it'll be added on to an existing word, and then you'll have a new word. So a prefix helps us to make something new out of something we already had, but to change the meaning in the process. So let's look at some common prefixes. We have anti, d, dis, inter, mis, non, pre, pseudo, re, semi, sub, trans, and un. Now, there's a much longer list of prefixes that exist in the English language, but I picked a few here that you would probably see pretty often on common readings and in texts. So I'm going to put them in context so that we can understand what they mean. So if you see antisocial, well, antisocial is the opposite of social, right? It means that someone is against being social, right? Not just that they don't even like it, but they are totally against it. So if you see the word anti added as a prefix, that means it's against whatever is there. So if you see detach, DE at the beginning there, well, we know detach is the opposite of attach. And so detach is kind of doing the opposite action, right? In the same way that if we have a humidifier in a room and then we put a dehumidifier in, it's going to do the opposite of what the humidifier did. Dis is meaning not. So if you see disorganized, we can just change it to say not organized. So if you see dis in front of any other word, you'll mean not, and then that word that it goes with. Internet. Well, we're looking at inter here. So if you see the word inter, as in internet or international, inter has a way of meaning connected. And so the internet connects all of us to each other, like with this video that you're watching now, wherever in the world you might be and whatever time it might be, we can be connected. International, like if we had an international gathering, I mean that people come from all over the world to connect together. Miss, as in miscommunication. So miss is like, again, the opposite, or like it didn't quite happen. So if you had a miscommunication, it means you said something, but the person didn't understand it correctly or thought that it meant something else. The same way you might misspeak about someone, or you might misstep as you're stepping somewhere. Means it doesn't quite go right. Non-toxic, as in non, N-O-N, that means not. So if you have something that's toxic and then non-toxic, it's going to be opposite. So similar to dis, as we talked about before, non means not. Pre-record, we've seen the pre again here. We know that pre means before. So if you pre-record something, you record it beforehand. Pseudonym. So if you see pseudo, it means fake, right? And then if we see nym, N-Y-M, that means name. Like you might think of anonymous. You have the N-Y-M in the middle there. Anonymous would be without a name. Pseudonym would mean a fake name. So you can think about, for example, the author Dr. Seuss. His real name is Theodore Geisel, and we are able to use the name Dr. Seuss as a pseudonym or a fake name for him for his publishing. Remind is our next one. If we see R-E, it's going to mean again. So if you remind someone, you're telling them again. And so anytime you see R-E at the beginning, think again. Semi-sweet is our next one, and semi means somewhat, right? So semi-sweet would mean it's not totally sweet, not totally sour or bitter, it's just somewhat sweet. Subway, sub means under, so think about the subway system that runs underground. You might also think about a submarine, which travels underneath the water. Transcontinental, trans meaning across. So if you had a transcontinental railroad, then that would mean that it went across from one coast to the other coast of a continent, or across that space. Unspoken, un would mean not. So if it was unspoken, that means no one ever said it. It was not spoken there. It was. Suffixes are what we're going to work on next. So a suffix is a part of a word that's added to the end of a root word. So you'll have a word, you'll add a suffix to the end, and then it'll give you a new word. Some of these will be very familiar, and I think the easiest way to understand them, again, is to look at them in context. Many of these we add to words, and we don't even necessarily think about them as a new word, but it's true that we change the meaning by adding a suffix. So let's look at the first one. It's ABLE or IBLE. So you might see words like foldable or flexible. Well, if something is foldable, then you can fold it. It's able to be folded. If something is flexible, it's able to be flexed or moved. So we can take that IBLE or ABLE and understand it as you can do something or you're able to do something. Our next one is the ED ending, and it just means that we have a past tense version of this, or sometimes a descriptive version of this. So we would say, today I hunt, yesterday I hunted. Careful, we can think about that FUL at the end as being full of something. So if you are careful, you're full of care. You're really being cautious, being gentle. If you are doubtful, then you are full of doubts. And so anytime we see that FUL ending, we can think full of, and then whatever is before it. Our next one is ing, which again, we add to the end of verbs. And when we add it to the end of verbs, it can act then as a noun, or it can act as a continuous action. Right? You could say, today we are moving, and it's happening right now, it's active. Or we could say moving is really difficult. So then it's acting as a noun. Creation is our next one, and the TION is an ending that means that it's a noun form. Often it refers to a sort of process also. So here we see creation, TION, we know it's going to be a thing versus the verb create. So again, this can be really helpful if we have a word that we don't know, but we see that ending on it, then we can at least say, well, I know it's a noun, and I can work with it from there, even if I don't know exactly what it means. Our next one is fearless, so that LESS, meaning without. So if you are fearless, you're without fear. Swiftly is our next one, and you can see an LY ending. Now, an LY, it means it's an adverb, or it describes how someone does something. So if we said, well, that person ran to the tree over there. How did they run? They ran swiftly. So the exception to this is friendly. Friendly is actually an adjective and not an adverb. So we wouldn't say they ran friendly to the tree. No, we would say they ran quickly, they ran swiftly, they ran carefully to the tree. Those words fall in the same category with the ly, but in English there are many rules and there are many exceptions to the rules. So just a quick note, friendly is one of the exceptions to the rule. Our next one is joyous, and joyous again is going to be an adjective with that OUS. So we might describe an event or a person as joyous. Claustrophobia is our last word here, and it's got the suffix phobia on it. So we can see claustrophobia is actually the fear of being in a tight space or being enclosed somewhere. So if you have claustrophobia, then you have the fear of the tight spaces. So if you see phobia, I want you to think fear. Another common one would be arachnophobia, or the fear of spiders. So to practice this, I want you to look at the meaning that we have at the top here and figure out which of the words below are most fitting with the word here, with the definition here. So if we have the definition without love, and our options are loveless, lovable, or unloved, well, if I see without, I'm going to immediately think less, right? So we said someone is without fear, they're fearless. Well, if someone is without love, they are loveless. Lovable will mean they're able to be loved. And actually, we ended up saying that unloved could fall in a similar category here. Unloved would technically mean not loved, but we could interpret that also as without love. So we said both 1 and 3 could work, but 1 being the most appropriate answer here. Having a judgment about something beforehand. Well, I see the word beforehand here, and I know that before is pre. So when I look at my options, I say judicial, judiciary, or prejudice. Well, we see that root of judgment there. The JUD is in all of those. But we know if it's about something beforehand, then we want to have that pre at the beginning. So prejudice would be the word that most appropriately fits this definition. And our last one here for the guessing is not able to be conceived. Well, I see that not able. So I'm going to be looking for that ABLE ending. And I also see not. So I want to have something that tells me that it's not going to happen. So I see inconceivable, conceivably, and preconceived. Well, preconceived would be about before something. So that one is automatically out. Both conceivable and conceivably have that ABL or ABLE in there. And so with this one, I want to look for which one means not. And that's where I find the IN at the beginning, inconceivable. So our last one is a mix of using some of our skills from before to find the prefixes and suffixes, and then to try to define the words based on the prefixes and suffixes. So we started by identifying all of the prefixes and suffixes, which you can see here in red. So if we look at each word, then we can use those to help us figure out what it means. Semi-conscious, for example, is our first one. And if we look at semi-conscious, the first thing I'm going to notice is that semi at the front, right, which means somewhat. So semi-conscious, somewhat conscious, and conscious describes our state of awareness. So if we know someone is conscious, right, they're fully alert, they're here. So if they're semi-conscious, it's somewhat alert. The next one, transformed. Right? So we know trans means across, some sort of change. So transformed, right, is a form that has been changed across to maybe another form. And we see that ED ending, which again could mean it's describing something or it's in the past tense. So transformed, if we think about, for example, a caterpillar to a butterfly, the caterpillar is transformed or changed over time into a different form. So unusually is our next one. Un meaning not. We see our root word there of usual, and ly meaning it's how you do something. So you're not doing something in the usual way, unusually. Nonsense is our last one, and it just has the prefix non, which we know is like not. It doesn't make sense, right? So not sense, it is nonsense. You can't make any sense of it. Thank you so much for joining me today for this Writing Club recap. I hope that you'll subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get all the updates about our latest videos. We have new videos each week, so make sure you come back and check us out. You can also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and at helmsacademy.org.